we are live. I want you guys to tell me that you can hear me. And she's making the wow face. I was like, oh my God, are we frozen?
That's not my wow face.
Welcome back. What an amazing story. You shared the winning lottery numbers. You predicted the next 10 years. But also at the same time, we're with Nikki Bruno, who's the CEO of the Epic Comeback, coaching not only for women, but now men who want to make an epic comeback in their lives after some tough times, hitting rock bottom, or some traumatic events. Now, for those of you who didn't get to hear it, Nikki started off with a gem of a quote, which was, "There's treasure after trauma." And I want you to take it from there. What are you meaning by there's a treasure after trauma, Nikki?
What I mean is that trauma can be a gift. There's always a gift in it. And trauma can also be a springboard for reaching the highest heights. When you've been in your lowest of lows, there's something about coming through and out of that. It's kind of like a phoenix journey. There's something about that changes you in a way that it gives you warrior energy, first of all. Anyone who's come through trauma is inherently, I believe, stronger because you've gotten through it. You've survived something that seemed impossible to survive. And so depending on the kind of support you get and depending on the mindset and the mind frame and the attitude that you develop in the wake of trauma and even during the trauma, it becomes an opportunity for you to kick booty in your life in a way that you never thought that you could, because you've got that warrior energy, because you've come through that thing. Like, so many people get tattoos or change their body or do make some really big change or have some kind of ritual after they go through trauma. Mm-hmm. The reason is that trauma changes you, and it can change you in the most positive of ways. So, and I've seen this over and over again. I'm not just like whistling Dixie here. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in my clients' lives, and I've seen it on my podcast where I interview people who've gone through multiple types of insane amounts of trauma and have come out on the other end and have kicked freaking booty and then have turned around and helped other people through trauma, which is exactly what I do. Cordone, I know you do that too. And it's really powerful stuff. So there's absolutely a treasure in trauma. And what's important is that we be open to that and that we look for it.
Yeah.
And we harness that warrior energy and then we use it.
Now, I want to throw this out that in positive psychology, it's called post-traumatic growth, right?
Yeah.
Like you not only like bounce back to who you were before, but you actually elevate and become better as a result of that, you know? And I'm curious about this warrior energy because Fiona's lighting up right now. Fiona's completely lightening up about this warrior energy piece. Talk about a little bit about the warrior energy.
The warrior energy, like it just comes from inside us. It's like this divine something that gets us through and keeps us taking that next little step and taking that next little step. When I was going through my trauma crisis that I'm sure I'll talk about in a minute, that was an extended period of time, 3 years in my life where I was either in or near crisis, there was something that brought me through. And some of it was support, some of it was being in therapy, some of it was, but there's this unexplainable survival instinct, whatever it is that you want to call it. I'm calling it warrior energy. It's what brings you through even when you don't know what's getting you through. Because for me, there were times when I didn't know, first of all, how I was going to get to the other side of the hell I was going through. And then there were also those times, those dark moments of the soul when I didn't know if I was going to get through, when I was asking, like, am I actually going to get to the other side of this? And here I am as proof of that. But it's warrior energy. And it also comes, I think, warrior energy definitely comes from times in our lives when we have kind of not an enemy. What's the other word? It's not an enemy, but like something or someone that you're fighting against. Yep. And I was going through a high conflict divorce, and I was literally in a legal battle with my then husband. And so I think warrior energy definitely gets activated when you're going through a struggle against something. It could be an internal struggle, and that was going on too.
Yeah, I think that was the next question I was going to bring up. Does there need to be an adversary? But oftentimes, I was reading about this morning. It was about intense, fast psychological changes. And oftentimes there is an adversary, and the adversary is yourself, your new self versus your old self. And you have to make a certain type of sacrifice to initiate the descent into the chaos, because things get a little bit chaotic once you start going against that adversary. Boy, there's a lot of people up in here today when we have sound, and you got that California hair going on. So I wanted to bring up this idea of trauma and how you define it versus stress, right? Or extreme stress. What is the difference between trauma and other things? Because I think in the vernacular, people will say that they're traumatized, but maybe in the clinical sense, they're not traumatized at all.
Yeah.
How do you use it? How do you define it? Talk about it.
I love that you asked me this question, because I'm gonna just like get right out on a limb and say I don't know.
Cool.
I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a licensed mental health professional, and so I can't give you a clinical answer to that. I'm a professional coach and a teacher and someone who's gone through trauma, and I do want to say right up front that yes, I work with people who've gone through trauma, but all of my clients are either in therapy while they're working with me, or they have recently just come out of therapy. So I am a therapy poster girl. I'm not one of those coaches who says, I'm going to heal your trauma, I'm going to help you recover. So I really want to make that distinction, because what I do with my clients is I help them take action. I help them get from point A to point B, and that's what a coach does. I help them with motivation, and I help them kick booty after their trauma while they are in the process of healing from it. Yeah. So yes, my clients definitely make progress in healing when they're working with me, and it's definitely healing and helpful, but that's not what I do. Like, that's not my explicit role. So I want to make that distinction before I tell you. I think of trauma as something that is an emotional wound. Like, trauma is something that we carry in our bodies, and that's like some, I think, newer research, but it's an event or a dynamic or a series of events or accumulated multiple events that can happen almost like water torture, where it's like a drip, 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 and it leaves an emotional wound. It impacts your emotional health. So it could lead to or be part of experiencing depression. It could lead to another type of mental or emotional disorder. And I leave that to the psychiatrists and the psychologists and the mental health, like in the mental health field, to define. But I think of trauma as something that wounds you and leaves potentially a permanent mark on your soul and on your psyche, and such that later on it can trigger you, and it can give you a reaction to something that might seem small to someone else.
Sure.
But that brings up some very major, maybe even like out of proportion reactions in you from some,
Absolutely. I love that you bring that up, because that was going to be a big piece of what I talked about. I do not think that people who go through life coaching programs are necessarily equipped to do therapy work, even though they'll claim that, this is my particular experience, blah, 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 blah. That's me giving an eye. I do like, from the neuroscience or from your standpoint, how neuroscience and the new science of sort of looking at things at a cellular level or a DNA level goes and shows the effects of trauma. I mean, you actually have for things like PTSD, you actually have parts of the brain that shrink, parts of the brain that begin to dysfunction, and it's almost like I believe it's been considered a traumatic brain injury now. Things like PTSD, but there is something that's impacted on a neuroscience level and also on a cellular level. You're absolutely right with that. The body stores that information, and it stores it in cells, it stores it in DNA, and that information can be passed. It's really, really, really interesting. So I'm glad that you brought that up before we went even into the ideas of hacking trauma, because I first saw this and I was like, oh my God, like shortcuts to trauma work for an epic comeback? I don't know if that's possible, Nikki.
Right.
But I'm glad that you brought that up, you know, and you're bold about it, and I have to respect where you're coming from on this. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about sort of these shortcuts to an epic comeback after trauma. Bam! I know that you have 3 of them. And what are these 3 shortcuts that we can look at? And also at the same time, Toy, I see ya. Walter, Fiona, I see ya. If you disagree, please, or agree, please write in there. And the question that I have for all of you that are watching live or on the replay is, how do you define trauma? Mm-hmm. How do you define trauma? So talk about some of these shortcuts.
I'm totally going to. And before I do that, I have to give another disclaimer, because I could totally see people seeing the title of my talk, you know, shortcuts to trauma, and being like, no way, Jose, there's no shortcut to staging a comeback after trauma. Are there no shortcuts? Like, I have a couple of notes here about what we're going to talk about, and at the bottom I have this like note that says no shortcuts. Like, are there any shortcuts? And listen, it takes time, 100%, to heal from trauma. And you can begin and implement staging an epic comeback in your life while you are healing to some extent, and certainly after you've done a good bit of healing. So my answer to the question is, yes, there are shortcuts to staging an epic comeback after trauma. It could take you 10 years to stage a comeback and get your mojo back. It could take you 5 years, or it could take you 2 years, or it could even take you a few months. It depends on the trauma. It depends on a lot of circumstances. It depends on the context. But yes, there are longer and shorter ways to kick butt in your life again after you've gone through something hard.
Sure.
And what I have and what I'm putting forward are 3 different ways to do that. And you can be doing these 3 different things simultaneously. So yes, you can move on from your trauma in a generation, or in 10 years, or in 5 years, or in 1 year. Absolutely. Sure. So number 1 is fitness, kick-ass fitness. Number 2 is reclaiming and rebuilding your relationship, your sacred relationship with yourself. And the 3rd is rebuilding your VIP crew, your community, your people, and curating that group of people that you surround yourself with. So those are the 3 things. And if you do all these 3 things, you're gonna like.
Well, let's talk about each of them individually. You know, kick-ass fitness. You know, kick-ass fitness. You know, like I wouldn't have thought about it, but then also at the same time, the times in my life when I was the lowest, I got my ass out there. I joined a roller derby team. I mean, I didn't think about what the effects were. Or I didn't think about what it was doing, but there was fitness involved. Talk a little bit more about how that made the sort of the top 3 list of shortcuts.
It's number 1, yo. And okay. I mean, it really, and this is where my personal story really comes in. So, you know, a lot of I statements now here coming from me. So the first time we tried to record this, I was telling like my whole life story. So like, I'll just say that the trauma that I went through most recently is that I went through a 3-year-long high conflict litigated divorce. And before that, I was in a marriage that for a while, before I decided to get a divorce, was toxic to me, unhealthy for me. There was a dynamic and some tough stuff that was going on in my household. So when I separated from my then husband, I took maybe a year to suck my thumb, to heal, to work with my therapist, to eat comfort food, to make sure I was getting, my feet under me, and my kids were okay, because I had two very small kids. And so it was by far the hardest time of my life, and it brought me to my knees, and it almost broke me. So emotional trauma. And after that year or so, I got my feet back under me. I was, things became a little more normal in my life. That's all I wanted, is I wanted a year of things being very mundane. I wanted to just take my kids to school and come back home and make my meals and do my thing and have things be really quiet and chill. And so I did that for a while. I didn't even think of hiring a life coach or doing traveling or anything that was going to be complex. So after that, I reached a turning point, and I looked in the mirror, and I hadn't worked out in 3 years. I had been eating comfort food, and I was compassionate with myself during that time because I was going through hell. And I was in crisis mode. And so there were some things about my health that were kind of falling to I just was getting from hour to hour or even day to day. So I looked in the mirror, this was, maybe a year and a half ago, and I said, Bruno, this isn't funny anymore. You've gained 30 pounds, my energy level was in the crapper, and I literally said, this isn't funny anymore. And the first thing that I did was I started working with my elementary school friend, Molly, who's a fitness coach. And I was like, Molly, just sock it to me. Give me a nutrition program. Give me a fitness program. And she did. And for the next 9 months, I followed those programs to the letter. And I got into definitely the best shape of my life. And my energy level shot up literally within 2 days.
Right.
And there's so much incredible research from very reliable institutions like Harvard that says that robust physical exercise, whether it be weightlifting, real weightlifting, or cardiovascular exercise, is just as effective as a treatment for depression and anxiety, specifically depression, as is medication on its own or talk therapy on its own. Exercise is robust exercise, regular exercise is just as good. And I have seen that. I have a history of depression and anxiety, and I have seen that every single time. It's like my body doesn't even think of being depressed when I'm in good shape.
I know that UPenn did some, not as good of it's not a Harvard, but also at the same time, it's a hub for positive psychology work. And very similarly, they found, and I think it was 3 times a week that it was exercise was recommended. And in studies, they found that it had the same effect of taking a mild antidepressant and Adderall, if folks have ADHD, it helps with both focus, and it helps with moving you out of that depressed phase. It makes a lot of sense. I didn't know where you were going with this, because I was like, oh, you lost weight and you felt great, but it was, I think about it, and there's the immediate impact, the endorphin rush, the dopamine rush that happens, right? Has anyone here ever been like, oh my God, I'm not going to work out today? And then you force yourself to do it, and you're like, that was so good. I'm so glad that I did that. There's that piece, but then when you do it for about, I think it's 6 to 8 weeks, you start seeing these sort of, other forms other than medication of antidepressant and focus. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing what you have in there. Anyone here involved in that kind of exercise, kick-ass fitness, nutrition, and how it's helped for you, let us know. I've got a couple people here that wrote in how they see trauma. So Walter Aguilar from Vancouver said trauma can be memories that have a high intensity or of catabolic energy that can be activated when we feel we are in survival mode, when we're in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. You may have heard of her, Fiona Barr, also from Canada. Canada's in the house today. Trauma is anything that impacts you in a negative way that changes your life. It can be, I didn't get the shoes I wanted as a little girl, or something like tragic death or violence. Yes, it's the way that we interpret certain things, right? Like when, as children, we don't know how to, it's hard to process emotions and articulate them. And that's sticky. It sticks with us. That's why a lot of the work that coaches do and therapists is about sort of healing that wounded child, because it's stayed with us for so long. I'm interested in the second piece. Reclaim, rebuild a sacred relationship with yourself.
Yeah. And fitness leads us right into that, because one of the shortcuts to, and I'm going to be bold and say this, one of the shortcuts to healing from, and I am not an expert on trauma healing, but one of the shortcuts to healing from, and definitely moving on from, and definitely staging an epic comeback after trauma, is to feel all the feels. That is part of honoring yourself and honoring what is inside of you, rather than pushing the feelings away, denying that they're there, or saying that you will deal with them later. The shortcut part is to feel them when you're feeling them. Cry, hit your pillow, like depending on what kind of trauma you've gone through, and I'll speak for myself, the kind of trauma that I went through involved rage. It involved me being more angry than I have ever been cumulatively in my life up to that point. And if you don't honor your emotions, and that is part of forming a sacred relationship with yourself, is understanding that you're a human being and you have emotions and something hard is happening to you or has happened to you. If you process them, express them, and exercise is a great way to do that, by the way. Martial arts, like really robust exercise, boxing, kickboxing, MMA. Roller derby, absolutely. Jousting. It is a way of expressing your emotions, again, with your body, because as Cordone and I have been saying, we store our trauma in our body. It's a wound that's there. And so if you use your body and move your body in a way that helps you express your emotions, so you have a really difficult exchange with your ex-husband or your soon-to-be ex-husband, in my case, you go and you work out instead of like lying paralyzed on your couch, which was also my response sometimes. So your relationship with yourself, and now I'm going to sound preachy, but I'm going to own that. Your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship that you will ever have. You're the person that you're going to spend by far the most time with in your life. Yeah. So to have a sacred relationship with yourself, either through writing in a journal, through spending time alone in a way that you enjoy, through meditating, and through getting to know yourself as somebody who has gifts that no one else has, is so important to being able to take action and take really powerful, bold, epic steps to live the life you've always wanted to live. So, number one, in terms of how to rebuild or build for the first time, even a sacred relationship with yourself, therapy. That is, like, therapists are experts in helping you do that, in helping you learn about yourself, and helping you process, express, and feel emotions, which if you do, you'll get to the other side of those emotions. You will get through them. If you don't do it, those emotions can be stored inside you and can keep you bitter and angry and sad and lonely, literally for the rest of your life. So the stakes are really high here. So therapy.
I really like what you're throwing out there, because it's oftentimes when we're in those lows and when we're in the these depressive states that we find ourselves very self-involved, right? Oh, it's all about me. What didn't happen to me? But you're talking about something very different when you're talking about this sacred relationship with self. I'm hearing things like radical self-acceptance in order to take action in the world, to serve others. Okay, and so I really wanted to make a distinction there because there's that idea that, like, yeah, there's self-involvement when you're, in that stage, but that depressive stage. But also at that same time, if you're not radically accepting yourself, it could result in what I'm hearing: repression, suppression, and that could result in addictive behaviors. It could result in people-pleasing behaviors, in which is totally, it doesn't serve anybody, or taking this sort of easy route and kind of being in solitude, and not in a productive solitude either. Is that what I hear about this second point that you made?
You're hearing it and then you're amplifying it, Cordone. I mean, this is like, it's the best, right? Like, this is whatever they call, like, house building or whatever, right. Barn building. It's like, yeah, 100%. And I mean, what you said about self-acceptance, one of my, like, bam, mic drop moments, well, okay, maybe not, but, like, you can judge, is like, self-compassion is the highest form of self-care. The highest form of self-care. And if y'all who are listening, if you remember anything from what I've said, in my part of what I'm saying during this show, I want you to remember that when you are going through trauma and when you're emerging from trauma, it's so important to give yourself a break. You're a human being who just went through something crazy hard. So give yourself a break. If you have to clear your calendar for a day or 2 days or 3 days or 4 days, if you have to, I don't know, like, if you get snippy with your family, if you do things that maybe you're not so proud of because you're going through something hard, please give yourself a break. Think about how you would treat someone else who is going through something really hard, and then bring that compassion and bring that empathy to yourself. Please.
How hard was this for you when you were staging your epic comeback? Sort of that give yourself a break piece.
I kind of went up and down with it,
yeah.
Right? So, like, I would find myself getting really self-critical, and this has happened throughout my life because I am, I'm definitely my top critic, with the exception of my ex-husband, and so I would go up and down with it. So, like, and even now, today, when I find that I'm getting on my own back and being really harsh with myself, I tend to catch it because I've practiced this and I've done a lot of work. And I kind of bring myself back and I say, you know what, give yourself some compassion, Nikki. And then the other thing that's really key for me, this is how my psychology works. And Cordone, I'm curious, and also the rest of you, if this happens to you. To me, self-compassion is very highly related to motivation. So here's an example. If I wake up and I'm just not feeling it, and I'm supposed to go do a workout, or I'm supposed to, host one of my podcasts, do a podcast recording, or something, and I'm just not feeling it, and I'm not motivated. If I take a minute and I give myself some compassion, and I give myself permission to potentially, like, okay, if I'm really sick, or if I'm just really not feeling it, maybe I can just bail. Maybe I can just not go and do my workout. And it's almost interesting for me. What happens is I give myself that moment of self-compassion. I get through it. But what happens is actually it helps me get in a place of motivation to then go and freaking do the thing. And then I go and freaking do the thing. Probably 9 times out of 10. Because I've given myself that moment of permission to sort of reconsider. And to then go voluntarily do it. And go do it with, like, with a little more gusto.
I think it makes a lot of sense. I think when it comes to motivation and self-compassion, and I'm just using I statements in this, at times when I'm not self-compassionate, I lose that idea that I have choice and agency in my life, right?
Yes!
And so to take a step back and be like, dude, okay, why is it that I'm feeling like this? What's going on? Okay, I've had a really rough day. What's my capacity right now? What's my capacity to do what I can do? And then going back to what choice do I have to be full out given the lack of capacity or this full capacity right now? And oftentimes that little pause is huge. It makes all the difference. We got Walter, who's totally lit up right now, learning how to be impeccable with our words to ourselves, earning our own trust. He's talking about. And by the way, I've got to say hi to Jorge. I see you waving at us over there. It's been a while, Jorge. I hope everything's well in Puerto Rico. And he's saying hi to you, Nikki, as well. Stop flirting with my guests every single time Jorge does it. So he's got a big old red heart for you, Nikki. I want to go to this last piece right now. Curate your ultimate VIP crew. What are you talking about here?
You know what I'm talking about, Cordone. You're part of my VIP crew, dude. Yeah. So this is about establishing a vision for how you want to feel when you're with your people. This is where it starts. Like, this is a step-by-step process, copyright 2020, the epic comeback.
Yep. She is saying it in a public place, so it is her idea right now. Trademark right here.
Right here. Yes. So you're going to establish your vision. You're going to ask yourself, how do I want to feel when I'm with my people? So I'll just claim for myself. I want to feel supported. I want to feel unconditionally supported when I'm with my people. And I'm talking about close people, the people who I'm with on a day-to-day basis. I choose to be with people who help me feel unconditionally supported and loved, who I feel like I can say anything that I want to with. I want to feel not judged, so accepted, to put it in a positive way. I want to feel fully accepted. I want to feel like I can have fun and laugh. I want to feel unstoppable when I'm with my crew. I want to feel held. And I will also want to feel peaceful. I want to feel at peace. I don't want to be around people who are going to agitate me sort of too much, who are like high stress, high drama. I want to be around my friend Jessica, who was my freshman year roommate in college. I've always noticed that when I spend time with her, I just feel calm. She has this calming effect on me. And it's amazing. And it makes me just want to be around her. So establish that vision. Ask yourself, how do I want to feel when I'm with my people? And then it's like super simple idiot proof. After you've established that vision, you make a list of the people in your life. You make a list of the people in your life who help you feel that way. And then number 3, you spend more time with those people. You deepen your relationship with those people. And then if you don't have a lot of people in your life who help you feel that way, who you feel that way with, you go find some freaking new peeps. You go, you build it. You join a meetup group. You look for people ideally IRL, in real life. You look for them online. Yeah. You join a hiking club. You join a church or other spiritual community. You find them, and then there are 2 other things, and then you share that. So that's one of the ways that's the main way to deepen a relationship with someone is you share with them. This is straight to Brene Brown here. You make yourself vulnerable. You tell your story, and you share what's going on with you. And when you're in a place of going through and emerging from crisis, I found, and this is so true of my clients and other people that I've talked to, that when you take that step and you get brave and you share what's going on with you, I am going through an apocalyptic, awful divorce. It connects you with people. People want to, okay, there are some people who may be I don't want to, that's TMI, or I don't want to hear that. Well, just let them go. Yeah. So that's the other thing is if you have people in your life who don't match your vision or who are actively not supporting you, because when we go through trauma, I'll tell you, regardless of the type of trauma, whether it's illness, cancer, something like cancer, a really awful injury, a divorce, some kind of loss of a loved one, people kind of reorient around you, and you find out who your peeps are, and you find out who your peeps aren't. and there are often surprises on both sides, right? So people who, like, when I was going through my divorce, people who really like came out of the woodwork and helped me in very amazing and beautiful ways. Some of them I was surprised at who did that. And then there were other people who I kind of expected were going to be right by my side, and they weren't.
Interesting.
And so it's important to have it's important to have compassion for people who are kind of distancing themselves from you, because it's probably not about you, it's probably about them.
To honor them, yeah.
To honor them, give them some compassion, and to let them go, like release it.
Yeah, I again, Walter, he calls them he calls his crew the success posse, right? I actually use Aristotle's term here. Who are your virtuous friends? You know, that I'm actually teaching it next week in our free positive psychology course for the Joy Revolution. But the virtuous friend is the one whose happiness is the highest when they see you reach your highest form of happiness. So it's sort of this it's sort of this groundswell of joy and happiness, accountability, those sort of things. But I love the way that you broke it down into 3 no shit moments, right? It's like, who do you want? How do you want to feel? Okay, find people who make you feel like that and let go of the other ones, you know?
Yeah.
Now, what about this piece? There might be some people right now that are asking, well, you know, when it comes to my VIP crew, some of the people that I see the most, either in work or in my family, are not qualified to be a part of my VIP crew, but I'm obligated to be with them and engage with them. What is your take on that?
Well, my take on that is that that's a bummer, and it happens to all of us. And what's important there is to create some healthy distance, whether it be psychological distance, whether it be space, you know. So it requires, I think, drawing some healthy boundaries. For example, if you have someone in your family who's really difficult for you to be around for whatever reason, maybe limit the amount of time that you spend with that person. And if you have to be in the same space, like, just find some sort of escape routes, like, you know, develop a spontaneous desire to go take a walk outside or something like that. And, you know, being in therapy and also working with a coach, these are really, it's really helpful to be working with somebody who can help you create those boundaries, and then also help keep you accountable to following them, you know, and help you learn how to regulate your own emotions when you're around people who tend to really get to you, and help actually script you give you some tools, like literally scripts for things to say when someone in your life says a certain thing. You know, like if someone in your life, I'll just give you a little example, like from my life. So when I was married, my husband would get home and he would walk up the stairs, and very regularly he would kind of notice something that was like awry in the house, and he'd be like, "Why didn't you open the windows? It's really hot," or something, you know. And it was something that, like, if I had learned a specific response that would have helped neutralize my own emotions, that would have been very helpful to me. I would have just felt more empowered. So I didn't have that kind of conversation with my therapist or with a friend or with anyone, but those are just some suggestions.
I think that those are amazing. I mean, therapists and coaches are completely virtuous friends, and should be a part of your VIP crew if you have one. By the way, Donna Ray, Brenda Baird, Fern Caslow, I see you guys. Thanks for watching. And then I also love this idea of finding little nooks and crannies that are sort of sacred spaces in places that are maybe a little bit sort of dark, right? Sort of those tough places to work with people, right? Whether it be with a family or you're in a tough job situation. I know that I had a conversation with an HR director who preached this. If you don't Hi, Donna Ray. If you don't feel safe in certain areas, either psychologically, or especially psychologically, because physically you got to go and get some shit done, go call security. But if you don't feel safe psychologically, go and create a psychological safe space on campus or on in the institution. For me, I worked next to a park, and so it was important on days that were particularly tough that I took a walk into that park, and there was a bench that I knew no one ever found, and I would sit in that bench and I would just kind of clear my thoughts for the day. So I love all of those ideas and how they come together. Speaking of which, this is called a segue, Donna Ray. Speaking of which, Kick-Ass Fitness, rebuilding and reclaiming a sacred relationship with yourself, curating your ultimate VIP crew. How does it all come together, or how did it come together for you now when it comes to staging that epic comeback?
Whoa, how did it all come together? Yeah. It came together in a way that has created a fully aligned life for me. It's a work in progress. I have rough days, believe me. I mean, there are all kinds of things that happen in my life that I can't control. And yet, part of my epic comeback was creating this brand, this business, this movement, this curriculum framework, this coaching program called the Epic Comeback. And this is my life's work. I mean, like for you in the Joy Revolution, it's like coming home.
Yeah.
And in addition to the work that I do in my business, I'm also out there in the media and I'm talking about things that I'm so passionate about, things that I want to share before I die, right? Messages that are inside me that I need to deliver. And they're messages about things like creating a sacred relationship with yourself and maintaining that. They're things like helping people. Like my superpower is that I'm really good at detecting and helping people know what their superpowers are. Like to me, that's huge, knowing what your superpowers are and being able to be in that pocket of your genius. And I talk a lot, like right now, I'm posting on LinkedIn and I'm posting on Facebook and Instagram a series of posts about emotional abuse and about the fact and reality that's been researched that emotional abuse, forms of abuse that are invisible, they don't leave a mark on your body, but they leave a mark on your psyche, your soul. And now that you were talking about neurology, Cordone, they do leave a mark on your body because they affect your brain, right? So verbal abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, all these gaslighting types of manipulation. So I am using my voice. So that's probably my answer to your question, is that like for me, my epic comeback and all these things that have come together for me, like getting myself back in shape. I kind of lost it a little bit on that, but I'm getting back on the wagon.
LA's an easy place to lose it at, and you're going through a move right now. So I'm going back to that idea of self-compassion.
There we go. And the relationship with myself and drawing healthy boundaries. Like when somebody F's with me, Cordone, I don't like. I'm done. Like, and that's another thing. Like, I'm 43 years old. I'm getting a little older. Like, I'm not going to spend time on the activities and people. And I'm going to boot the haters, Like, I'm just not going to I'm going to boot the haters. Like, I don't have time, bro. So for me and, like, the people that I spend time with, like, I have the most incredible friends and colleagues and family members and, people. I have the most incredible VIP crew, and you know that, Cordon, because you know some of the same people I know, and they're like freaking amazing people who feel joy when I feel joy. Yeah. Right? Like in a way, it can be easy to be there for a friend when they're going through a hard time. When one of your friends has all these wins and is kicking ass and is filled with joy, for some people it's hard to support a friend who's filled with joy.
It's very hard. I mean, Nietzsche talked about it when he said, everything's fine and copacetic until you grow a pair of wings and start to fly. because then that's when people will start to pull you down when that joy starts coming out. I love the fact that you talk about that VIP crew, and this stuff is really research and evidence-based. I mean, one of the top things in all of psychology is the relationships that we have, whether it be the relationships with your therapist, which is, I forgot what it's called. It's just called the therapeutic relationship, or sort of the relationships that we have with the world, right? But what I love right before that is when you're talking about rebuilding your sacred relationship with yourself. When you have a sacred relationship with yourself and you have a radical, loving, forgiving perspective on yourself, suddenly that changes the perspective that you have of the world. If you were in this self-loathing phase where you were the victim, then the universe is against you, right? But then all of a sudden, if you see yourself as this sort of hopeful, joyous person, you see the world as a hopeful, joyous place. You surround yourself with hopeful, joyous people, and you work the fuck out. Like, it's amazing. It's really amazing, and it's so funny how much we forget about those things when we get into these sort of dire situations, or what we think are dire situations, which are actually opportunities for us to forward ourselves with great amount of momentum. You know that you're going to get the golden mic in a second, and I advise everybody to stick around because Nikki, you're a fiery person. You speak, you shoot from the hip, and you make the microphone something dangerous. And I want you to speak into the golden mic in a second. But because this was a special episode, which we just had to do live with no pre-written stuff, I want to be able to plug. The Epic Comeback. And your free guide, the 7 ways to get your mojo back today. If you go to coachbruno.com/the-tipping-point, coachbruno.com/the-tipping-point. What do you get with those 7 ways to get your mojo back? What are you talking about here when you're talking about your mojo?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I want to say it's CoachNikkiBruno.com.
Oh, what did I say?
You said Coach Bruno.
Oh, Coach Nikki Bruno. I call you Coach Bruno in life.
Well, it's okay. Yeah, Coach Nikki Bruno. Yeah, what you get is you get it's just a few pages long. It's a guide to like just the top 7 ways to get your mojo back. It's kind of like, it's similar to the topic today of 3 shortcuts to staging an epic comeback after something traumatic. So it's pretty similar. Mojo is it's like your chutzpah, it's like your power, it's like your swagger. It's like, my clients, who've gone through divorce, they're coming to me and they're saying, I've freaking lost my mojo and I want it back so bad. Yeah. I want it back so bad. I want to feel sexy again. Mojo is feeling sexy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Go to the site. I'm going to repeat it one more time so it's not wrong. CoachNikkiBruno.com/the-tipping-point. Go there and pick that up. Also, if you missed it, we are giving away an entire positive psychology course. I'm not talking about a one-off webinar. I'm talking about a full positive psychology course with 4 positive psychology live coaching sessions. The whole thing is live. The whole thing is a course. If you go to joyrevolution.com/positivepsych02, you can enroll in our second classes tonight. It is not too late. Go to that. It's my way of just it's my infinity game. It's my way of living my calling, is to give away courses that would be like $20,000-$40,000 if you went to Pennsylvania. So if you liked what you saw today, come to that course, and also go to Nikki Bruno's site. Now, Nikki, here's the part that everyone's been waiting for. We had everything get wrecked, but we knew we were going to get on today and talk about this. There is a golden mic over there in LA, right next to the In-N-Out Burger, coming to your place, and now it's coming down your ceiling. And it's a visioning activity. I want you to imagine that this golden mic has the power to translate into every language all across the world. Every sentient being in this multiverse can actually hear what you're saying. Now, some people won't be picking up what you're throwing down. Some other people might be tuning in right now and need to hear what it is that you are about to say. Coach Bruno, you can say whatever you want into this golden mic. So, Nikki, your golden mic is live now.
I don't care what you've been through. I don't care how hard it was. I don't care what the obstacles are in your life. You are the only you, and you can stage an epic comeback and kick ass in your life again after you've gone through something rough, or even if you haven't gone through something rough. You can do it.
Nikki, I want you to hold up that golden mic. I want you to feel the weight, because I'm going to hand it off to Mark Purvis tomorrow, right? Before I do, since we have a huge budget on this show, I want you to smash that golden mic, smash it, and I want you to sing your favorite 80s song now. Sing your favorite 80s song.
She's a maniac
on the floor.
And she's
dancing like she's never danced before. Amazing. I can't wait to have you back. Let's talk about you coming on the long form podcast. I would love to have you on the podcast to talk more about your story. This has been a very special episode 206 of the Golden Mike Live, and I want to throw this out there for everybody. If you're feeling good and you're living life to its fullest purpose, which you couldn't hear at the beginning that Nikki talking about, our question to you is, what is your responsibility to change history for the better? Mark Cordone, Nikki Bruno, we will see you tomorrow with Mark Purvis. It's over. See ya!